I'm not confident until the ink's dry, but we've accepted terms. We've signed for this fight before. He did implode a little bit after that defeat because he's a winner, and he was very frustrated and he was devastated to lose.
Okay, then Eddie, I'm going to start off with obviously Canelo versus Golovkin this Saturday. It's probably one of, if not the biggest fight of the year. But just how much bad blood is there actually between these two?
So much. I mean, there's been a lot said. I think obviously the first two fights were very close. So firstly, you have the controversy of both guys thinking they should have won that fight. Triple G, who is immensely respectful, does like to say a few things, in interviews and away from face-to-face with Canelo Alvarez, whereas Canelo Alvarez has been, pretty brutal in his approach and the heads-to-heads and everything. And he's coming off a loss. He wants to bounce back, and he wants to bounce back in style. And Gennady Golovkin comes at a new weight, which I think is going to really suit him as well, and probably a last roll of the dice to try and become an undisputed champion, and obviously to defeat Canelo Alvarez.
And this is the third installment of this fight now. If Canelo goes on to win, will it put to bed the claim that Golovkin maybe deserved to win one of the previous two fights?
I think there'll always be that claim, and just because Canelo wins this one, but I think from Canelo's mind, he doesn't just want to win this fight. He wants to end it in style. He said that he won't be happy unless he knocks Triple G out and finishes his career. So that shows you his intentions in the fight. But that's dangerous, to go in there and fight in that kind of style. You saw in the second fight, he was very aggressive and he walked Triple G down and it was a war. And I think you're going to see another one on Saturday. I think you'll actually see the best of the three fights this weekend.
And then obviously in his last fight, he got a bit of criticism for the way he sort of handled his build-up, coming into it, sort of adopting the vegan diet, for example. Have you seen any sort of changes in his preparation in the build-up to the fight?
I just think that, it's difficult. You got a man now, but was a kid who was selling popsicles, ice popsicles on the streets of Guadalajara. You come through, he's achieved everything. He's won multiple belts in multiple divisions. He's got more money than God. He's got everything he could have ever dreamed of. And how do you have that same kind of desire, that same kind of intensity in the sport? And I think sometimes maybe you can take your foot off the gas a little bit, and maybe he did in the Dimitri Bivol fight. But we shouldn't also take away from what Dimitri Bivol did. I mean, Canelo Alvarez moved up to 175 pounds. He probably shouldn't have even been there in the first place, but that's what it takes. He wants to be handicapped, really, to be competitive. And that's why this fight has so much more intrigue on Saturday, because he's coming off a defeat and people want to see how he's going to bounce back. And I think there was an air of invincibility around Canelo Alvarez that might not exist anymore.
And then there's plenty of other fighting news. Obviously, one of the things that's dominated this week is sort of the whole talk of Eubank versus Benn. Eubank Sr. came out and said that he was pulling out of the fight. So what is the latest on this situation? And the Eubanks maybe trying to dodge the fight in some way?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Chris Eubank Jr. is definitely not pulling out the fight. He believes he can win. His trainer's come out on record and said his weight is good. He feels strong. The commission, the British Boxing Board of Control, have been weighing him. They're happy with where his weight's at the moment. So mind games or just some bizarre comments, I don't know. But, we've been reassured by Wasserman and Chris Eubank Jr. that absolutely the fight's going ahead.
And what's it been like to work with Eubank Sr.? Obviously, we know he's a larger-than-life character. Your dad as well has said before many occasions, he's a great figure sort of in TV and entertainment. How is he to work with in sort of
I've probably known him for 35 years, which and he's always been very close to our family. He's a huge part of our company's success in the early sort of 90s. And he's a character, he's a great fighter, but he's very difficult to work with, and he does some bizarre things. And but that's part of the attraction behind him, and he'll be a big part of this build-up. I'm sure he'll be in the corner for his son's fight as well. And I think fight week's going to be very lively.
And then obviously, of course, AJ and Tyson Fury, that's sort of one that has surfaced up. AJ's accepted Tyson's terms for a fight on December the 3rd. How close are you to getting the contract from Frank Warren? Is it a coming days thing or a bit longer? And are you confident that the fight's definitely going to go ahead?
I mean, the fight, I'm not confident until the ink's dry, but we've accepted terms. We've signed for this fight before and it got cancelled because of the arbitration with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. But last Friday, we accepted terms for the fight. We're still awaiting a contract, which we've been assured we should get in the next day or so. And if they're genuine, I think the fight will happen. AJ's wanted the fight for a long time. I would like to have negotiated some of the terms, but they said we couldn't. You know, we have to accept these or they're going to move on. So AJ said, let's do it. And we've all got our fingers crossed, as the whole country, that we see that fight in December.
And obviously, if this one does go ahead, do you think this has potential to be sort of an all-time great fight? Not even just
I mean, the biggest fight in boxing, obviously the biggest fight in the history of British boxing. But I just can't imagine there won't be a person in the country that won't be watching that fight. I mean, it's one of the biggest sporting occasions of all time for our country. And, you know, like I said, I don't want to get too excited yet, but things are looking good.
And then just sort of to round off in general, how is AJ doing in general? Obviously, sort of very deflated and understandably after losing to Usyk, but you know, he sort of dusted himself down quite quickly, seems to have got back in the gym and seems sort of very focused and determined to sort of get back on track.
Yeah, I think, you know, he did implode a little bit after that defeat because he's a winner, you know, and he was very frustrated and he was devastated to lose. And I feel like, you know, what went down after that fight and his, you know, the way he spoke at the press conference, I think it was good for him. I think it just took a little bit of the pressure away that he's been under. You know, people got to see the struggles that he faces, and I think people embrace that as well. And you know, he feels good. The plan was to go and fight in December and maybe in February or March and have a couple of comeback fights against top 15 guys. But the Fury fight was offered. You know, he put the bait out, and AJ said, "Let's do it." So we'll see if that gets over the line.
Do you think that could almost help him in a way, sort of, because you'd imagine that he would probably go into this fight as the underdog? Do you think that sort of...
He will, yeah. And there's no pressure for him, you know. I mean, look, you'd always like to go into a fight like this coming off a win, maybe with a bit more confidence. But at the end of the day, you know, he's a big underdog going into this fight. He's always believed he can beat Tyson Fury. So, therefore, you know, he likes his chances in the fight. It's a chance to become world heavyweight champion again. It's the biggest fight of all time. So, he's ready to roll the dice once more.